Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for joining me today, Christine. Good to have you. I'll just as a little intro to what we're doing here. I'm the MD of Reshaping People, and we focus on supporting innovative, purpose-led leaders and innovators in the built environment to build sort of high-performing teams. And today we're talking about the adoption of AI in the built environment, and we're doing that in partnership with the Red Foundation, who are an industry not-for-profit corporation or organisation, not corporation, organisation, working to help the real estate sector and society benefit from the use of data. That's specifically their purpose. And myself and Tom Shriver, who's the chairman of the Red Foundation at the moment, are doing these interviews to sort of get a bit more insight from experts in the built environment about how they're utilising AI, where they see it going, and all that sort of exciting stuff. So, as I say, Christine McHugh is with us today, and I'd love that. Well, could you give us a little intro, and then we'll sort of get into it.
Yes, absolutely, Alex. Well, thank you for having me. Christine McHugh. I'm the founder of White Strand Development. We are a prop tech advisory firm, really specializing in linking technology to building operations, more on the functional side. We really look to leverage, I'm going to say, landlord and tenant documentation, the lease language, building rules and regs, their contracts, corporate standards, just to focus on where there's opportunity to tighten things up so that we could use AI to measure energy, waste, water, air quality for the real goal is to reduce carbon emissions net zero.
Amazing. Well, yeah, I mean, I imagine there's quite a lot of opportunity for usage with AI and the impact it will have within that space. So definitely very keen to pick your brains on that. So can you maybe sort of talk to us about the opportunities you see for AI, or maybe elaborate a little bit more on what you're doing, day to day. You sort of gave us a little indication there, and maybe how the opportunities you see there for AI to integrate into the field and have a benefit.
Yeah, I think day to day, what I've been really focusing on is contract language, maintenance contracts, for instance, looking at to make sure they're as tight as possible so that tenants and landlords could potentially use the AI that's generated from those systems to get clean data sets. And really what I envision, and this is more integration, is using things like energy modeling and maintenance contracts to really have that baked into your building rules and regs so that there's a lot of transparency between the landlord data sets and the tenant data sets. And, by looking at those, I guess, time of day and day of usage patterns in the data, occupancy data, for instance, and energy data, you really can find opportunities to really reduce carbon emissions. So I really kind of look, as far as my opportunities, risk reduction strategies is one of the things I always look at. Leak detection, refrigerant leaks, and really looking at potentially lowering property insurance rates. There's some ROI opportunities there. And also demand response and dynamic temperature settings. I think that playing with those set point strategies enables, clients, landlords, and tenants to really reduce cost. Sometimes it's not energy, but you're reducing cost, and you're also reducing capacity on the grid during times when, during the regular daytime when you're paying the premium, but you're also, stressing the grid. So by looking at demand response set point strategies, there's opportunities there to save a very much a lot of money, but also to, help reduce pressure on the grid.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And are you And you're focused predominantly on the US market. That's right, isn't it, Christine?
Yeah, actually, I have a few corporate clients that are global. So
Okay.
it's making me think differently. Of course, the majority of my work is in the US, but with my global clients, a lot of what we're looking at, like scope one, scope two emissions, have
Mm.
been required in the EU, I think since 2014. So I'm kind of trying to get baseline data with who is leading these efforts. And even if the US isn't required at this point, or Southeast Asia, to track something, we actually set up the foundation for these global corporate clients to be able to track it. And so when it is regulated, they can then report on it. But we're putting tools in place now so that they can, you know, be ready to report on it, and at least internally know where they potentially have some risk, or what part of their portfolio they should be focusing on because of different risks that are going on there with energy or air quality or waste, etc.
Cool. And have you actually utilized AI within those projects, so far, and to what capacity? Or
Yeah, no, absolutely. With things like leak detection, as an example, I've rolled that out at least for portfolios in the United States for large financial clients, and they have and actually worked with their property insurance partner and gotten rate reductions from that risk reduction strategy. And we continue to kind of push those opportunities. I think,
is
you know,
there
the
is
end.
there is
Go
there
ahead.
particularly bits of software that you utilize for
Yeah, no, I
leak
think,
detection?
I'm very agnostic, quite honestly. I think most of the time for large clients, we have different tools. I use whatever they have. To me, it's a data set. And a lot of times we're just thinking of a data lake and pulling data, but if it's a cloud, if it's off of the BMS, there's cleaner ways to do it. It depends on your budget and really having the right team to, clean the data initially, but also maintain it. And who's reading your data is always, an interesting conversation. But really get your baseline information, kind of clean, so that you can start looking at data sets in a way that's really meaningful, and you could get the most impact from those type of reviews. So yeah, I think on the energy side, there's a lot of occupancy and energy. We continue to look at data and opportunities to reduce cost and to reduce carbon emissions. A lot of times aligns with cost reduction, because you're really changing usage and adjusting usage patterns.
Yeah, I mean, if you're reducing the energy, then obviously the cost is coming down.
Yep. And sometimes
And
you reduce the cost and the energy doesn't come down, but still that's a win. When you're
yeah, of
thinking, because
course. Oh,
then,
yeah.
the clients can put, some of these operating costs into something else, kind of to get fully integrated on some of these other net zero opportunities.
Initiatives. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
excellent. And so, what challenges have you faced? When it comes, or have you encountered incorporating
Yeah.
AI into work processes?
Yeah. I think the quality of the data, integrating legacy systems is always a challenge. I think that's the baseline, and that's sometimes where people really struggle the most. But then there's a lot of siloed groups when it comes to large corporations, and getting people to, leasing, then you have corporate real estate, you have operations, that are all kind of setting up a structure that puts something in place that reads data. And then you have people like compliance and ESG and sustainability that are really looking for data sets after these things are set up. So I think that really having the leasing team, corporate real estate, operations, and engineering, those teams have to really be aligned with some of their contract language. And that's where I'm seeing, honestly, a lot of disconnect. So that's an opportunity to me to help them help themselves. lease language, corporate standards, maintenance contracts, even the engineering RFPs. Just globally, a lot of people don't understand that, engineers a lot of times are speccing something that may actually not put you in a place where you can read the data after it's built. So you have to be very clear about your RFPs and what you want out of the built environment, so that you're not left in a position where you don't have transparency to your own energy data.
And I suppose there's lots of, a lot of buildings that are standing now, the existing stock, you've got old systems in there. How do you then get them up to date and, help get the information out of that?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of that where you have a lease, a 15-year or 10-15-year lease, and they may have a net zero target for 2030 or 2035, and their lease is got another 15 or another 10 years on it. You're in a point where you don't have transparency to the data. I think it's worth a conversation. Most landlords will allow you to put a sensor in if they don't have smart meters, as an example. And then you could look at your own usage for sensors coming into electrical panels. That's where we put those sensors. And then you can have your own data and you can look at it, or you can have transparency and they'll allow you to pull data off of their BMS. And that's where you start. And that, at least, it's not them pulling utility bills and, you're trying to look at the day of the week or time of the day usage patterns, which is really where you find problems. If you just get a 30-day Con Ed bill and it's just a dump of a value and how many watts were used, it doesn't really tell you where you may have a problem. What I've seen is we look at time of day and day of the week data sets, and a lot of times the 2 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday has the same usage as 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we'll go to that. Well, for whatever reason. Is that
because the heating's still on, or whatever?
Something happens. Someone came in and maintained the copiers, and they took off the, there's an energy efficient. They hit the button, and now these things are on all night. And it happens. It's human error. It happens, but you catch it when you have transparency to that, and that's really why it's a mindset. People have to be looking for the opportunities. And I think there's a lot of folks out there that are really doing great work, tightening these gaps.
And is that where AI can come in and,
Oh, absolutely. I think that AI could adjust automatically if you have overriding settings. This happens with lighting, for instance, but, it could obviously happen with heating and air conditioning. If we tie occupancy, as an example, to air conditioning, I was looking at overtime air conditioning. A lot of financial and law firms always have overtime air conditioning. People work crazy hours, but a lot of times it's set. They have air conditioning from 7. Just say the regular building air conditioning is on 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. They will have a 15-year lease where it's 7 p.m. to midnight every night, that every floor has air conditioning, because that's what their folks work. But, they don't realize that maybe Fridays in the summertime, or if there's holidays that, that they could actually, they don't have the people in the space.
Levels aren't there, exactly.
So, or what happens if they leave at 10:30 and not midnight? You're paying, and you don't know, and people aren't just checking out. There are a key card. There's key card data where you can look at, but a lot of folks aren't looking at smart elevator data and key card data. So what I've set up is occupancy data, and then, set reports. We're showing, weekly or daily, what the patterns are. And if you're seeing at least one floor that is leaving at 10 o'clock and another floor is leaving at midnight, then you can go to the occupants on the one floor and say, we're not going to give you air conditioning from 10 to midnight because we're not seeing that that's a need here. And at any point, if we need to increase it, we will. But right now, because we're not seeing that as being required by your team, we're going to put it till 10 o'clock. And those type of, these are conversations, but you're really doing it to, to have more of an environmental impact. A lot of times on Saturdays and Sundays too, that they come in and they work again 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. is what I've seen as a lot of corporate overtime air conditioning on weekends. And a lot of times they don't come in until 10 o'clock in the morning. These are investment bankers, and they're not in at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. And if you could just go to that division head and show him the data and say, we're going to make an adjustment at any point if we need to pull it back. And these guys are businessmen. You start with people make decisions based on data. So if you give them good data, they will make good decisions. That's what I think the C-suite does very well.
Yeah, makes sense. And what about sort of looking at some of the more exciting AI applications? Maybe not just in your field, but broader. I mean, what have you seen that is really exciting, do you think?
Well, I think what I think is really exciting, I don't know if it's be exciting to your listeners, but there's some interesting things going on with Legionella and water science, which I'm fascinated personally by. That I think they're looking, sorry?
Tell me more.
Yeah, I think using property technology, and this is flow sensors, temperature sensors, different things like that, to actually read more predictive analytics on Legionella, which develops partially in cooling towers, dead legs within buildings, water main breaks. These are the type of environments that this builds up. And by using technology, you can, flush portions of a system when needed to try to be more proactive about this, to obviously it's preventive measures, but also, you're trying to think about the pipes within your building and the mechanical system in a more proactive way that's really thinking about health and safety and building operations, holistically. And again, there's an opportunity there for lower property insurance. I've spoken to the insurance tech and insurance providers, and there's huge lawsuits associated with Legionella. So if they can show that they're looking at data and being proactive with the building infrastructure, that's risk reduction. And if you're looking at the data, so I find that fascinating myself.
Well, and there's lots of that obviously insurance policies have been rising, and I suppose it's good to be able to utilize this technology and AI to minimize, potentially reduce your costs in terms of insurance, in terms of energy usage, and that's obviously to the benefit of the world and everyone within it. If we can get to net zero and well, that makes sense.
I think it's also starting to tie, and this is where I feel like things are really getting exciting, where you can't have a smart building in a dumb city. And I've always been thinking about, and I started in the smart building space where we're looking inside the envelope. And I think once I started doing more research on the Legionella and the cooling towers on the roof and outdoor environmental conditions that add to this, and then I found out, at least in the US, that we have a higher outbreaks associated with water main breaks. And I was like, so now we're mapping these type of things and, thinking about notifications for hospitals, nursing homes, daycare centers in neighborhoods where there's a water main break, so that those buildings proactively do things to reduce risk, knowing that they're in a heightened risk situation. But I think that's partially where you're thinking about smart cities. And how are you making sure that you're thinking about life safety in a way that's proactive, because the building, you want the building to not have conditions that are potentially hurting people inside the building, but also people on the street outside the building as well.
There was a cool bit of tech I came across actually on this sort of point. They're called Untap, but my understanding of it is it's been they were a startup I saw about a year, 18 months ago, but they put like in the sewage system underneath the building, they put in a little lab, and as all the waste goes through, they check it for pathogens, and then when it hits a certain level, they can say, you've got X amount of influenza or whatever in your building, there's a breakout, change things accordingly. And I thought that was really cool.
No, it's fascinating. I think it was just in August there was an outbreak. Maybe Australia had an outbreak where 90 something people were contaminated. And I know, because I do these research studies on Legionella, that people kept emailing me like, did you hear what, and I said, it's a cooling tower. I said, it's got to be a cooling tower. Look at the map. People are, it's in the wind. Unfortunately, Legionella stays live up to a mile in the wind. And when you see those patterns of outbreaks, so it was, and they did find the building that was sick. And, but I think that, like you're saying with this, was it Untapped, you said was the name of that company that was doing
Untapped, yeah.
Yeah. People are just thinking differently. I was introduced to someone in Tel Aviv that was using flow sensors, and they had sewer overflow into in a resort area into, I guess, the Mediterranean. And during certain times of year where they, had the hotels that were full, and they came in and put, they were looking at tide data and storm data and the sewer data, and they were actually shifting. I'm going to say, I'm not a smart city person, but they were shifting some of these zones. So when there was high tide and storms, that some of the sewage was getting shifted back further away from the shoreline. And since, I think it was 6 or 7 years when I spoke to him in the last year, since they've installed this whole system of sensors and reading it proactively and shifting storm water and sewer capacity into different zones depending on the flood or the tide information. They haven't had a overflow of sewage into the Mediterranean since they've installed this. And I think that's just phenomenal. And that's, because you're looking at information, if we're hurting the environment around us, it hurts all of us. So it's not just energy. There has to be a look at, environmental data as well. And how do we look at, smart cities and coastlines and risk in that way, floodplains proactively. Yeah. So I think that the smart building and smart cities, it's a lot of overlap. And that's where there's a huge amount of opportunity. I think first responders, building access, floor plans, getting into buildings if it's an ambulance, just trying to get people access. And if someone's in a fire truck or, an ambulance and they're going to a call, that they are seeing a floor plan of the building. They know where the stairs are, the elevators, how to get in, and what the codes are to get in. This will help, save lives. And I think that's really what you want. I want my refrigerants, because they're explosive, they have explosive value, or any chemical storage. I want first responders to have transparency to where these things are, so that they can, of course, it helps save lives within the building. It helps with setbacks if there is a fire, that first responders have people on the streets protected and moved to the correct locations away from, but for their lives, but also property damage. These things are all tied back to insurance policies, and it's blending a lot of smart city and smart building thought process and foundation. So yeah, it's good stuff.
And what about obviously I'm focused on the workforce and talent and that sort of stuff. So I'm interested to get your thoughts. And this is something that comes up quite a lot, but the impact that AI will have on roles and people within your fields. That's obviously a big fear. A lot of people talk about it. Where do you sit with that, and what do you think where do you think
I think, we're at a point now where, hey, AI is reshaping our future, and those that are utilizing it in a way that is predictive are going to be making better decisions, and better decisions equal, kind of better business, more money that's saved, and better carbon emissions. So where I see opportunities is on the data analytics side. Obviously, who's reading your data? And if you're in climate tech or fintech or prop tech, insurance tech, all these aspects of business are all going to intertwine with each other. Like I'm saying, prop tech and insurance tech. And if you can read the data and help shape the framework for what clients need to help them help themselves, that's a very powerful position that you could have in an industry that is currently changing. And I think it'll continue to change. So I think there's a huge workforce gap associated with these technologies, and people coming in and really.
So not that there not being enough people with that knowledge to understand the data and that type of thing?
Yeah, I think, some of the big, building BMS companies, for an example. I'm on the ASHRAE New York City Board of Directors, and, I've said to some of these guys that are BMS firms, you have all this data. Are you like leak detection? They're like, we have leak detection. You have to have 100% leak detection for this to work. But are you using any of your data to lower property insurance rates, like leak detection? They said no. So there's opportunities with data we already have. And people think you have to spend all this money on data. I think that between set points with demand response set points and looking at risk diversion or risk reduction strategies with partnering with your property insurance firms, I think that without adding a lot of tech, but just reading it, isolating your data sets and having the right team reading it, you could add value and save money right out of the gates. So that's where I think there's opportunities. I think a lot of these firms are just getting their arms around how could they monetize this as an extension of their services. So I think, we're at the very tip of things starting to happen. And I think people that are coming out of school that are thinking, what should I do? And they have some kind of an interest in insurance tech or something, they should just dive in and, and be, open to, progressive conversations and thought leadership with, as that part of the business evolves.
And I think, did we talk when we were discussing before about the skills gap in terms of the engineers and people actually working, fixing buildings and, that sort of stuff? There's a sort of an aging population and skill set, and certainly in the UK, and I believe the same it's the same in the US, that there's not many people going into the trades. And funnily enough, one of the guys who's also on the Red Foundation, he runs a business in the UK called Help Me Fix, and he's using AI to help diagnose problems within the property management issues. I mean, he's predominantly resi focused, but this would apply exactly the same within commercial. But they're training AI to answer the questions that people may have in terms of fixing issues, and now they can get AI to fix like 6% of the problems that people call about. And so I wonder if there's some capabilities there for AI.
No, there's 100%. It's interesting because I'm on the board of directors for the US PropTech Council as well. And there's a lot of resi folks in that group. And I do see, because I'm on the commercial side, a huge amount of cross connect. But one of the guys on the US PropTech Council actually is Canadian, but does a huge amount of work in the US. And he was telling me, and he does, I think, multifamily, mixed use kind of, residential complexes. A lot of the calls that they get are the notifications, work order tickets. They send a guy out, and some of these you could do over the phone and troubleshoot without sending a guy out. And I think when we're talking about embodied carbon and people driving around all day to go and, it's almost like when you're, I assume this is the way it happens in Europe as well, but I only have a context in the US. But if you're having a problem with your internet, your TV's not working, they don't send a guy out. They give you either, you can do it through the phone or through your computer or through your TV where, they walk you through resetting, but it's not a guy that's there. And I think there's an opportunity for some of the easier fixes to have somebody, either a building engineer or a site super or a building superintendent, somebody who's boots on the ground that could potentially do something that's low-hanging fruit to reset a piece of equipment rather than having somebody deployed to a location to do that.
Yeah.
And I think AI will help that. I think that's easy. And I think there's people that are out there that are doing this already, that are doing a great job. You just have to, partner with the right folks, and they will help you reduce costs like that.
What about the sort of ethical and practical considerations that people need to consider when they're adopting AI? If you had any, what thoughts do you have around that?
Yeah, of course, data privacy is at the forefront of the ethical side of the conversation, and it should be. And I think that we need to have the correct level of maintaining human oversight while leveraging AI capabilities. And that will ensure, that we're ethically responsible. So I think that we can't lose sight of data privacy. And I think there's cybersecurity folks and there's a lot of IT folks behind this, but they have to be at the table and in the conversation as we're looking at if something sits inside a firewall or where it sits, why it sits there. A lot of these systems will allow you to pull data out, but won't allow you to put data back. A BMS is an example of that. It's not a two-way data. You can pull data out at any point if you have the permission set up, which you should as a tenant. But that at least gives you transparency to the data. But because of some of these data privacy, they won't allow data to be pushed back into a system. So I think that as long as that is on the forefront of everyone's mind, and as you're implementing new technology and databases, that sensors, are they wireless? Where are they? I guess when I first started out, I didn't realize that, it could even be like a, daylight saving sensor or something that's wireless, and, that it could be a listening device. Like, I'm not a person that is, I didn't realize, once I knew, but when I first was starting to, put sensors in, and there's a lot of sensors that are battery operated, which is wireless sensors, or PoE sensors, that you're really wanting to make sure that that they can't be used by some of the bad actors out there, because people, people are trying to get in to get information into businesses or buildings, and you have to make sure that your company is protected, your employees are protected, and that all falls back on a foundation of data privacy.
Definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that makes loads of sense, and it's, you've got to be really careful, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity for leakage. I mean, I'd be interested to think about which way it goes. As I was talking the other day with someone else who was saying, doctors might be putting people's information into ChatGPT because they're trying to find a diagnosis, but then they're moving all of that data from from the system into ChatGPT. Then does ChatGPT own all that information?
Yeah.
There's lots of opportunities for leakage, and also
Yeah.
the value of it is more important. So, I hear about larger organizations, or maybe like when we're talking in the built environment, like the JLLs or CBREs, or, organizations with lots of access to information. Do they then ring fence it and try to stop anyone else having access? So it makes it more valuable. But
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to know where it goes. But
Yeah. And then I think there's even people that are selling certain aspects of data. And you see this even with your iPhones. You could be talking about, buying jeans for Christmas or something, and next thing you're getting advertisements for jeans. So I think that there's appropriate sharing that is low-hanging fruit that maybe people are allowed to share because
beneficial.
I think some of the transportation and smart transportation data that I'm seeing that people are looking at what kinds of cars, how many electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles, what kind of cars they are, what kind of tires they drive. And they're selling that kind of data to, the industry that is, focusing on them as their clients to try to see regional information. If you want to sell, I'm going to say, snow tires in an area that this is, obviously a pocket. I think that there's aspects of this that are appropriate, and I think as long as there's framework around it, I think that in my mind, I would be okay with some levels of that data sharing. But healthcare and I think some of the information that happens inside your home is inappropriate to have that information accessible. So I think that the governance around some of these things, and that may be related to policy, local policy, has to be really tight so that things don't get muddied, and you want really clear boundaries on how data is shared and what data is allowed to be shared.
Totally. Excellent. Well, Christine, I think that brings us to the end of the chat. So look, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And listen, these are, you guys foster these meaningful conversations, and I really appreciate you having me on and kind of having, I always think of them as seeds. You plant some seeds of what we could be doing. And I just want more people to really be thinking differently. And, I think that it elevates the whole industry. So thanks again for including me.
No, you're more than welcome. Thank you for joining me. Thanks, Christine.
All right. Have a good day. Bye, Alex.